Hey everyone, it's Cheyenne.
And Jared.
And we are the Coals, and this is our channel called Coals of Fire. For those of you who are new to this channel, hi, welcome. And if you are a regular viewer, then welcome back. On this channel, we share educational advice, lifestyle, educational videos just on the Bible, and then also recently we've been doing reaction videos sharing our opinion with a biblical twist. So in today's episode, or I guess you would say video, we are actually going to be showing a clip from a specific interview done by the Breakfast Club, and the person that they were actually interviewing was Phylicia Rashad. And if you don't know who she is the infamous Claire Huxtable on the well-known show, The Cosby Show. She played the wife on that show for many, many years. So she basically is sharing her opinion and her reaction to women and modesty. And, you know, it is very interesting, especially hearing from someone who is or has come from the entertainment industry herself. And also just from someone who has, you know, a differing opinion. She's from an older generation than us. So if you're interested in seeing what she has to say and also seeing our reaction, stay tuned for this video.
Morning, everybody. It's DJ NV, Just Hilarious, Charlamagne the God. We are the Breakfast Club. If you're just joining us, yesterday, Phylicia Rashad stopped through the show. We got a chance to sit down and talk with her. And this is one thing she said about the way women dress today. Let's listen.
You know, you came up in an era, Miss Rashad, where dignity and grace were everything. So you ever look at how wild Hollywood is now, and you just think to yourself, boy, y'all got it easy. Y'all wouldn't have got away with that in my day.
Yeah, I don't even have a look at Hollywood. I can look at the way young ladies dress. The young ladies are so beautiful. And I don't mean to be critical, and I hope young ladies listening don't take this as personal criticism, because I don't mean it that way. But you're young queens. I'm taken aback when I see on a college campus young women dressed in strips of clothing. But more importantly than that, no man wants his woman to be out like that. Right?
So we're taking your calls, 800-585-1051. And
So, like, it's funny that someone who's in the entertainment industry, who obviously comes from Hollywood, right, can still understand that. And that is very rare that you will see someone from the entertainment industry who comes from Hollywood saying something like that. But I do think a lot of it also has to do with the generation and the older generation that she's actually in. Because let's just face it, even though Hollywood was Hollywood back then, women still back then tended to dress a lot more, I don't want to say wholesome, they just had more clothing on back then. Can we say that compared to now? It's like just less clothing in general, and she tried to be as nice as she could about it, but you know.
Yeah, most definitely. It's not what we see now was not widely accepted back in the day. Even back to, you know, way back in the day, back in the times even when they had like saloons and stuff, you know. Even with the women that say like for even like so like your modern day strip club, even back then when they had like saloons and stuff, they didn't show that much clothing even in those days, you know. Back then, like showing your ankles was kind of risque or whatever, or a little bit too revealing sometimes. And so, you know, it's just things have definitely changed. And to be honest, I could see it being even worse than it is now, like in the future. Like, it's just going downhill, to be honest.
It's literally, and this is coming from a Christian perspective now, right? We're putting on our Christian hats. It's the slow progression of literally what the Bible says. As in the days of Noah, so shall the coming of the Son of Man be. Where, you know, if the devil had, you know, put someone that was from 2025, right, as a celebrity, and stuck her back then in the early 1900s, it wouldn't have flied at all, right? It just would have been like, what on earth are you doing? But slowly but surely you can see in America's history, as the generations have gone by and the entertainment industry has gone by, movies have gotten slowly but surely just a little bit more violent, just a little bit more sexually provocative, right? And slowly but surely there's been these slight changes over time to where now, like you said, where we're at, something that would have been shocking for someone to see back then, you know, we're just so used to seeing nudity and violence and whatever else going on that it just doesn't even phase us anymore. I mean, it's everywhere. It's on the billboards, it's in the stores, it's on it's everywhere, you know. So yeah.
Asking, how do you feel, Jess?
I feel like she definitely was spot on, you know. Even if it's not for a man, though. I mean, because I know that she turned to you, Charlamagne, and she asked, you know, would you want your woman out, you know, exposing her body? Not for nothing. It's even for yourselves, you know, like just having dignity and just, you know, respecting
like
yourself, leaving something to the imagination. I know my grandmother and my mother used to say that all the time, leave something to their imagination. Now, I've dressed skimpy and all that, but it's a time and place for it, I believe. And sometimes ain't nothing wrong with showing what you got, you know what I mean? But like, it's a time and place for it. And I did it more when I was single. So I understand.
Pause that.
I mean, like I said.
Okay, so this is huge. Do you feel like there's a time and place for it? Like, do you feel like, you know, because this is I'll give the perfect example. This one is a really hard one, and I've even struggled with this. So I really want to know your opinion as a male. Remember, for all the ladies viewing this, right? I've heard many times, even by women in my family, well, you're going swimming, so, you know, what's the big deal, right? I mean, the purpose is to swim. It's not like you want to be swimming around in a t-shirt. So would you say, okay, in normal life, it wouldn't be okay to walk down the street with a bra and underwear, but if you're swimming, is it okay to be like in a bikini and bikini bottoms? And, you know, what's the difference in that for you as a male? What is your take on that?
Well, my take is, you know, society has changed so much. Again, like we said, like back then, if you showed like an ankle, people would think that's a little bit too revealing. And throughout times, with everything going on with societal changes, even like things like that, when it comes to going to like beachwear or whatever, the clothing has changed to be more revealing as well. And I agree. I think that, to me, and I didn't used to think this way, but like as you get closer in your walk with Jesus and learning more about the Bible and learning about not being a stumbling block, you start to see certain things that you don't think about sometimes, and learning not to be a stumbling block is important. So when it comes to like things like that, like bikinis,
can you elaborate on what a stumbling block is for viewers who might be watching and they don't know what a stumbling block means? I don't know what a stumbling block might mean. What do you mean to be a woman and be a stumbling block? What is that?
So to be a stumbling block is basically you're doing something that would possibly cause someone else to sin. So for a good easy example is like if you know your friend is an alcoholic and they can get drunk, which being drunk is a sin in the Bible. There's nothing wrong with drinking alcohol as long as you can control how much you're drinking and you're sober when you're drinking. There's nothing wrong with drinking alcohol, but once you start to become to a point where you can't control yourself and you're drunk or whatever, it's an issue. And so some people are alcoholics. So if you have a friend that's alcoholic, and you're sitting there drinking, maybe even drinking in front of them, try to drink some water instead of drinking an alcoholic beverage, or drink some juice or something. because you know that this person has an issue, that they're okay, maybe, you know, they might be like, oh well, my friend is drinking, so I shouldn't be, you know, it shouldn't be an issue for me to drink like 1 or 2 drinks. That's what being a stumbling block is where you're causing someone else to basically sin, or especially if they're, and it's really bad if you know that they have a problem. Now, if there's something like, for example, like what we're talking about with women and revealing clothing, men can have this issue too, is revealing clothing too, in a certain way, in their own way. But like, there's a thing about having lustful thoughts, basically. Like, okay, this woman has a nice curvy body, you know, I can see a lot more of her skin, and so for some men, they might have an issue where they're like, oh well, you know, they can't control their thoughts well enough to the point where like, you know, they're like thinking lustful thoughts, and in the Bible it says to think of the act of adultery with another woman, it's a sin, because you've already committed adultery in your heart. And it's the same thing if you were to, you know, think about another woman in a sense that you're like kind of fornicating with her. And there's nothing wrong if like you're single and you see another woman and you say, okay, she's attractive. There's nothing wrong with that, of course. But if it's something like, so someone's wearing something sexual, of course it's like, well, dang, like I'm seeing everything that you have to offer already, and we haven't even introduced ourselves. You know what I'm saying? So that's the issue when it comes to, like you were saying, bikinis, in a sense nowadays, there's no difference between that and like undergarment wear with women, like lingerie and stuff a lot of the times, because it's pretty much the same amount of revealing their body in both instances. Basically, that's how I see it, because you're seeing the curves. They don't have this, like, it's pretty much the same thing. You're wearing a bra and underwear is the same thing as a bikini, you know. So I think that that's something that people do need to be mindful of, because it's practically the same thing, and no one would want like their kids, especially if you have daughters or whatever, you wouldn't want like your daughters to be walking around with underwear and a bra on out in public, you know. So why would you want them walking around like that on the beach? That's the same thing, and it's the issue. And another thing that they were talking about is it is a time and a place. I do agree it's a time and a place. Like if you're with your husband or you're just walking around in the house and y'all both are by yourselves in the house or whatever, then fine, yeah. Or whatever y'all do in the bedrooms, whatever. But now out in the public, you know, the thing about it is, like Phylicia Rashad, she was asking DJ Envy about like, okay, what do you think or whatever, or you know, how do you feel about it? Because some men kind of like look at their women who are like not dressing as modest or kind of revealing a little bit as kind of like a trophy, kind of like, oh, I'm gonna show her off and that type of thing. And so that's an issue too, where you can't be that way when you're walking this walk with Christ. You can't be like that and be like, oh well, I'm gonna just show off my wife's curves, because there's another person that might have an issue of, oh well, I'm gonna look at her lustfully or whatever and think all this stuff. So I think that's what I think about it.
So I'm gonna play the devil's advocate for you. Sorry. And I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just trying to help your argument. So, because there's gonna be a lot of people that have a different opinion than what you just said. And one of the most common arguments that come up for women or in circles of women is, why should I have to owe anyone anything that I do not know? Right? So one of your hugest arguments right now as to why a woman, right, shouldn't wear, I guess you would say, more modest clothing in spaces that she feels like is appropriate, like going to the swimming pool or going to the beach, right, is because as Christians, right, we are giving it from a biblical perspective. You shouldn't want to be the assistance of someone else falling, right? Someone might argue that from another Christian standpoint of view and say, well, why should I be responsible for other people and their sins, and how would I know? You know, it's one thing if you're saying like, oh, I have a friend and I know that my friend is an alcoholic, right? But maybe you don't know that your friend is an alcoholic, right? And maybe you don't know that your friend has a sexual perversion or a sexual addiction to porn or whatever. You know what I mean? So then someone might argue and say, so should I live my life or do things based on the account of others? You know, when you're going to a pool and you're going out and stuff like that, I mean, you don't know. So what would be your response to that?
Well, it all comes down to like your journey and your life walk. Some people might not know, and that's where it comes down to situations where they're going to places. Like, this is the thing, like the Bible says that narrow is the path and then wide is the path to the destruction, basically. Not everyone is going to make it, and a little few are. And so the thing about it is some people are just not going to know, and God's not going to judge other people for not knowing. But at the same time, it's like, for them to know, they would have to go basically on their own personal experience to be like, okay, I look back and I was dressed a certain way, and this is how this group of men have treated me my whole life. And they would have to kind of self-reflect on that situation, you know? That,
what do you mean by
like
that?
how
This
they're
is
treating,
how
like
this
kind of
group
like
men is treated
kind of
my
like
whole life.
these people that just aren't really trying to get to know you. They just try to treat you like some inanimate object, basically. You know, they're not trying to get to know you. They're not trying to make a committed relationship with you. They just think you're just like some type of toy or whatever, and they're not trying to do anything to be committed to you. You know, a lot of people can tell by clothing, oh, well, this person doesn't have any self-respect for themselves. They're easy or whatever. Or, you know, that, or you're going to get another group of men that's like, I'm not going to mess with her because she's revealing herself. So that's another thing. Like, no man wants to be with another lady that's revealing herself like that unless they just don't really, or they're not really all that serious about it for the most part. You know, unless they're just of the world and they're just like kind of like, oh, well, they don't see a big deal. And that's the thing. That's the issue with this generation nowadays, is that people are kind of, like you were saying, being desensitized to it to the point where like, oh, they don't see an issue with it sometimes. But the thing about it is, it's not good in a relationship because you're just revealing yourself to people besides your man, basically, and that's not good. So
I'm going to help my husband out, guys, because I feel like it's a lot harder to hear stuff like this from a man and versus from a woman. And being a woman, I think that it's a lot easier for me to talk about this. But I think what you're trying to say is that a man of class, okay? Because let's face it, there are going to be men that a woman can attract, and they might not be looking at her for just one thing. Before you came to Christ, and I'm sorry, honey, but I'm going to put this out there. Before he came to Christ and had a close relationship with God, his standards for what you thought would be okay to be have as a woman were a lot lower. Right?
yeah.
But that doesn't mean that you were just looking for that in a woman, right? But a lot of that had to do with your relationship with God. And I think that the best way to put this is, if you are out there and you are someone who is wanting to have a spouse or a husband that has a relationship with God, then 9 times out of 10, he is going to be looking for a woman that carries herself in a certain way and that doesn't just stop at the swimming pool, or that doesn't just stop at places that you would assume or expect someone to dress appropriately, like at a job interview,
like a church,
or church,
yeah.
right? Or going to your in-laws' house
right.
for dinner, right? But he is expecting her to carry that same energy of dressing with modesty in all aspects and facets of her life. If he is someone who is trying to model the Bible, and if that is what you were looking for. Now, if you are looking for or wanting someone who isn't, into Christianity like that, and, they don't really care how you dress, if you're at the pool or things like that, yes, they don't want you to look crazy like you're, whatever for certain situations, but it's not that big of a deal, then that's fine, right? But this is for the ladies, once again, that I think that line needs to be drawn there of understanding the difference between if you're looking for a man of God or if you're not looking for a man of God. But, for the Christian ladies or women out there who are wanting a spiritual partner, and let's say modesty still is something that you're struggling with, you might want to check in on that.
That's basically what I said. But yeah, let's get back to the video.
Interview. I grew up on Method Man saying, 3/4 of cloth, never showing your stuff off. Nas saying baggy sweatsuits and mystery was underneath them. Like, so it was, to me, it's always been about just the beauty. Mm-hmm. Like, what does your face look like? Yeah. And then you imagine what's underneath all of the clothes. So I totally understand what Phylicia, Miss Rashad is talking about.
I agree with Jess. There's a place and time for everything, right? And the reason I say that is my wife, when we was teenagers, she wore what do they call it? The bicycle shorts and the tops. That was the style back then. You know what I mean? But she also wore baggy clothes and jerseys and
right. So they're okay as men who probably aren't as Christian, but they're women having a certain look for certain occasions, not necessarily all throughout all aspects of life.
When women do have on clothes like a black dress, like a fitting black dress, or even when women be out here walking around in the yoga pants with the yoga outfit. That's what I like to see my wife in when she got on her yoga.
Well, yoga pants ain't skimpy, but it is sexy.
That's what I mean. Like, that's what I like to see. I like to see my wife in that black dress with them yoga pants and that.
Because you can still see her shape, but you're not seeing any of her skin.
Exactly.
Well, let's go to the phone lines. We have Dom on the line. Dom, good morning.
Pause. So now I think that's another thing that we need to really address is the difference between just straight up raunchy, sexy, and modest. Okay? Because, this is a rough conversation, but I had the hardest time understanding this. And oh my goodness, I still do. So please don't chew me out, guys. But it is really hard when you are someone who has, I guess you would say, a curvy body shape. And I know that I have a curvy body shape, right? So for me, wearing what they were saying, which would be like yoga pants, right? It might not look raunchy. Like, I'm not walking around like, a video vixen or something like that. But it'll definitely still attract attention. We'll just say that, right? And so I think it's important when we are listening to this to remember that if your goal and aim, because I'm trying to be as impartial and unbiased as possible, if your goal and aim is to come at this from a Christian perspective, your goal should not be to be looking sexy, okay? When you walk out of your house. Mm-hmm. Looking nice is one thing. Sexy is another thing, okay? What they're saying is don't look raunchy. Because there's a difference between a girl looking like she's about to go be a stripper on a pole, right? Like Phylicia Rashad was saying, you guys just have like straps around, right? You're walking around with, your nipples showing through your shirts. I mean, just doing the whole nines, butt cheeks hanging out at the bottom of your shorts. Like, yes, that is just, it's not a good look. It doesn't look classy. It gives off, low class vibes, right? I think they're trying to emphasize the difference between being sexy but still looking good, but not being raunchy. if you are trying to look at this from a Christian perspective, you would go a step further and say, no, I'm not trying to look sexy at all, but I also want to know and learn how to dress nice. Okay. So I think that's just something to keep in mind while we're watching this. Are we on the same page?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Hello?
How you doing?
What's up, Sid? Talk to us. What's your thoughts?
Alright, so talking about girls dressing like in stripper clothes, right?
Yes.
Alright, so I'm two minds with this, right? People should be able to dress how they want to dress, right? But be smart about it, right? Like, know where you at and what you're doing. Like, at HBCUs, you gotta dress in classic clothes all day, every day, especially when it's cold outside. I see these women be talking about, ooh, I'm cold, ooh, I'm so cold, but they wear nothing but crop top and a skirt.
That is the thing. I don't know. Like, people do not like in this generation. There's a certain generation, especially the youngins. They don't like wearing jackets for some reason. When it's freezing outside, it don't make no sense.
Right.
Well, thank you, brother.
But the whole, like, not covering up thing,
So, like, I understood his point as a man. He literally is telling you what he's thinking. Ladies, listen to what that man just said.
It's the same
He
thing.
literally said, and this once again goes back to even if you took Christianity out of it, right? You look really dumb when you say, I'm not doing this for attention, but then you're wearing something that isn't even functional to the weather, right? It's uncomfortable. You're having to pull it down constantly all day. Your dress keeps riding up. Your feet are freaking blistering and hurting. Honey, at that point, everyone sees you struggling. Everyone sees that you're cold. And you saying that you're doing this for yourself when you look miserable right now and your whole outfit is malfunctioning and falling apart, you just look laughable at that point. And you look like you're trying too hard. And if I were a man, that's what I would think too. Just saying.
Gotcha.
Just saying. Okay, so what's your end all be all and takeaway before we read the scripture and close out?
Be mindful of who's looking at you when you do things, man. Because when you're in this walk with Christ, you don't want to be a stumbling block and cause someone else to sin, basically. And that's important. And then you also want to just show that you have respect for yourself at the end of the day. And if you're really, again, it's like a broken record. Just if you're really looking for someone that you want to build a long-term relationship with, dress accordingly, because you want to be with someone that's going to treat you right at the same time. Not someone that's just going to be like, oh, well, this is someone that I'm not going to take seriously. So just be mindful of that, y'all. And that goes for men and women, you know, in a certain sense, because there's some men that it's starting to go downhill for the men in this society too, where they're kind of being revealing in a sense with, like, you know, certain things that they're doing. But hey, you know, that's all I had to say about it.
I have 2 sets of advice because I feel like if you're watching this and you're not someone who's like really looking at this from a religious standpoint of view, then my advice to you would be, like they said, there is a time and a place for everything, okay? When you're at the beach and you want to turn up, right? Like, know your audience, okay? When you're at an interview, please don't come in some skin tight outfit. You know, same thing we mentioned in our previous videos, you know, with the campaign and Kamala Harris. She got a lot of flack for that, bringing, you know, women on there, dancing and doing all this extra stuff, you know, at a political arena. Didn't make any sense at all, right? Understand the time and place for everything. So if that's, you know, what you're struggling with, you're having a hard time understanding what Phylicia Rashad was saying. She was basically saying that know how to act like a woman in the streets, right? know how to carry yourself on a professional level so that you can level up and people can see you in that light as a professional woman. And that goes about how you walk around in your day-to-day, right? Do you want to be seen all the time as the girl who's always dressed in super sleazy and provocative outfits and always looks like she wants everyone to look at her? Or do you want to be taken a little bit more serious in life? And, that's totally up to you, right? How you decide you want to show up and want people to view you. On the other hand, if you want to take it another step further, and we're talking about for those who are interested in the Christian perspective, who want to look at this from a godly perspective, no, there's not a time and a place for everything when it comes to dressing modest. There isn't, oh, I'm going to dress modest when I go to church, but then I'm going to dress immodestly when I go to...
There's still a time and a place, because you can dress immodest in your own household when it's you and your husband, but not...
I'm not talking about in your own household. I'm talking about in public places. There is not a time and place for everything when it comes to public places as a Christian. Your Christian hat is on at all times. In the Bible, when it says to do everything to the glory of God, that means that there isn't specific places that you're going to turn on your Christian modesty girl moment and then you're going to turn them off, when you go to certain events and things like that. It's on all the time, right? And so don't complain, women, Christian girls, don't complain if, you're not getting the sort of Christian man that you want if you have been doing that. And if he goes to your Instagram, right? Because Lord knows I had to clean up my own Instagram. I didn't have anything super crazy on there, but I do feel like I had, some cutesy girl outfits, right? Don't complain if you're not getting the sort of Christian man that you want, but then when he's interested in you and he goes to your Facebook, he saw you turning up for Jesus and doing praise music at church, and then he went on your Instagram and he saw you looking,
at the club after naked.
Yes, there you go. So, it's about being consistent in your relationship with God. There isn't a time where you turn that on and off as a Christian. You're supposed to be the same around everyone all the time. And I think that that's the difference between the viewpoint of modesty in the world's eyes versus the viewpoint of modesty from a Christian perspective. And that's the honest truth and unbiased opinion that I can give in this scenario.
All right, everyone. So the scripture for this video is 1 Timothy chapter 2, verse 9. And this is the English Standard Version translation. Likewise, also that women should adorn themselves in respectable apparel, with modesty and self-control, not with braided hair and gold or pearls or costly attire. So yeah, it's talking about both y'all being respectable in how you dress, and also not being too flashy with materialistic things,
or just flashy with you showing your skin,
just showing a whole bunch of jewelry.
The mindset, all about wanting people to look at you and having that need and desire for people to see you and to be seen. And I think one of the things that is a huge takeaway from this, whether women want to accept this or not, is that when you are wearing clothes like that, you are wanting to be seen. Thank you everyone for watching our video today. We're so glad you got to join us. Hopefully you felt like we gave, a real unbiased perspective and gave you a different way to look at, modesty. And we actually want to hear your guys' opinions on what you think about modesty. Maybe you have a different opinion than us. And if you do, that's okay. We want to hear all about it. So shoot those comments in the comment section. Tell us how you feel. What is modesty to you? What does that look like? And how far is too far, right? And, you know, do you feel like there's a time and place for everything when it comes to the modesty world in Christianity? All right. Well, thanks so much, guys, for joining us. Until next time, see you soon.
See ya. Bye.